Apartment dwellers of Reddit, what secrets have you learned about your neighbors through your paper-thin walls? NSFW. My neighbor has been learning to play guitar for almost a year now. He's gotten a lot better. It turns out that they don't spend any time in their apartment and instead have hour-long conversations outside my duck-eye door in the hallway. Some arsehole who lives right above me is a lot louder than he seems to think he is. Just the other night, I learned he's quitting alcohol and switching to wine. My neighbor's teenage daughter sent some nudes via Facebook and got caught by her mom. That girl got yelled at like I've never heard. And I heard it all because I turned off everything in my place that made noise and stood with my ear against the wall basically the entire time. Lived in a 4-apartment strip back in the 90s. Quiet, peaceful, perfect. One Saturday afternoon, I'm sitting on the couch watching TV and hear a gunshot. Second later, another. I run next door and pound on the door. Can't get in. So I call 911. Tell them this and cops show up pretty quick. Turns out the elderly couple next door did a murder-suicide pact. When I was younger, I moved into this new apartment complex. First night there, it started. 6 noises. Every night around 11 PM I hear this couple having sex. Loud sex. I admit that I found it a bit entertaining, because it never went on for too long, until a couple weeks later, I see the guy walking out of his apartment. 75 years old and quite husky. Nobody was having sex. I was listening to his porn over surround sound. My neighbor is the neighbor. Single guy in his 40s. He makes no noise and is rarely home. I see him leaving sometimes in the morning, always in a suit and tie, hair perfectly combed, and he drives a M6. But one weekend each month his 2 sons come to visit him. They're both pretty young, and the week before they come I have heard him on the balcony talking with someone on the phone about the plans he's made to do with his boys once they're there. Also once they're at his apartment I can hear him read to them every night before bed. I heard my neighbor give birth when I was a kid. It was planned. There were a bunch of people there and she did it in a bathtub or something. My neighbor next to me has an unhappy relationship. The neighbor above me is gay and has dreams of going to Broadway. He also might be an insomniac. My upstairs neighbors absolutely love to move their furniture around. I assume this is supposed to be a secret because it only happens between 3 AM 4 AM. My neighbors used to get really high and make crazy food and eat snacks loudly late into the night. My favorite thing I ever heard as I was passing by was, "Dude, yes, and then put some ducking cheese in it, dude. You mean stuff it inside the bell pepper? Duck yes, and then put that in the oven." Loud moaning. I've learned that my neighbor probably abuses his wife. Which of the 3 AM hallway arguments brought me to that conclusion? Was it the one where she locked him out and he tried to break down the door? Or the one where 4 separate neighbors called the cops because they were screaming at each other for almost an hour? No. The one that really fixed my impression of him is when he chased her down the stairs carrying a ducking metal pipe and he swung so hard at her that he broke off a chunk of the concrete. I kept the broken shards as a souvenir for the cops. I learned that my old neighbor's kid is an adventurer in the body of a 9-year-old boy. The first conversation I ever heard between mother and son was something akin to her shrieking, "What are you doing to the carpet?" "I'm digging a hole, Mom." I often heard her crying and one time asking him if he'd prefer to live with his dad, because he seemed miserable with her. She thought that was why he was acting out. He ended up crying, too, and begging her to let him stay. So he did, and at least they seemed to get on better after that. To not end on a sour note, the funniest thing I think I heard was her shrieking, "Oh my god, where did your clothes go? Not here. What are you doing? I'm free, Mom. I'm free." She scolded him, but after I heard him stomp off, I heard her laughing pretty hard on the other side of the wall. The woman next door has a relationship with her cat that's interesting. She's a recluse in her mid-40s. Nothing wrong with that, but she doesn't seem to be handling it well. She treats it like a human, and I'm not talking about how much she loves it. Her relationship with it plays out as if he were an actual family member. Dynamics and all. They have fights. A lot. Mostly, She feels that he neglects her feelings and doesn't appreciate how much time she puts into being at work and doing all of the housework. She wishes he would at least help take the trash out. And when she has sexy time with herself, she doesn't understand why he complains about having to go outside. Last night they had another fight, but I got home late, so I don't know what it was about. She spent about an hour throwing things, and eventually kicked him out for a while. It's weird. I just got home from work. She's at it again. Everyone seems to have neighbors who duck a lot. I heard my neighbors get into a fight because she won't have a sex with her husband anymore. It isn't a secret since the whole ducking apartment can hear it, but apparently my next door neighbor likes to watch Michael Bay movies at full volume. Sometimes I can feel when my neighbor uses the toilet. If I'm in my bathroom, especially on the toilet, I feel a shift upwards as if they say down at the same table as me. This is about me. I own a condo now, but I used to live in a cheap apartment. At the time I was actively seeing 3 different girls. I lived next to a family of 3, young child, and they were very quiet. One morning, heading out the door, the mother said to me, "Hey, you called Julia Kari last night." That was how I found out I had thin walls. My neighbor that lives below us likes to get gangbanged by groups of dudes twice her size, and she's not exactly petite. I was suspicious when a group of dudes showed up after her boyfriend moved out. Loud music was playing, so I figured it was just a party and a group of dudes showed up at the same time. Then the music shuts off in the living, but turns on in the bedroom. Proceed to hear dudes cheering each other on, her asking them to give her more D, high fives and other slappy sounds. Doubt it was awkward getting the mail the next day as she slowly walked her dog. She looked like she was hurting. X and I heard neighbors going at it, younger couple around our age. Their bedroom against our bedroom, layouts are mirrored. We laughed really hard about it at first, then it got really annoying. So we basically started making all their sex noises at the same time they did. After about couple months of doing the noises to them, I ran into the neighbor getting mail and we both cracked up hard. Came to find out they had heard us having sex first and started making noises, which we thought was them having sex. So for the past few months the 4 of us were literally laying in bed making sex noises at each other through the walls. There was 2 women that lived above me, college aged, same as me and my roommate. You could hear everything through the floor, everything. The woman above me had lots of sex, and that's fine, but it was always loud and it was always at 4 AM or 5 AM or summit. I had to work early a lot of days, so it was really ducking irritating. So one night, I stand on my bed and hit the ceiling with my shoe and ask them to quiet down. The noise stops but the talking starts. Guy, did you hear that? I think someone was talking to us. Girl, nah. The dude downstairs is probably watching TV. Me, I am talking to you. The people on the 3rd floor, ducking loudly. Please be quiet. I gotta work in a couple hours. Guy number 2, he's definitely talking to us. Girl, no he isn't. Me, wait, 2 guys? Guy number 3, no, there's 3 of us. Chris keeps ducking everything up. Screams of Chris this, Chris that, etc etc. I don't know if this is a secret, but I heard the dude trying to kill his GF. Called the police. Dude left in handcuffs. I used to hear my neighbors ducking. Then 2 22-year-old guys moved in, who are pretty cool. As far as I know, one goes out with his girlfriend a lot. The other plays hours of Rocket League. I like the second guy better. She sounds like a man squatting more than his ability when she has sex. She hits at 430 pounds on the wall due to constipation. Her ex-husband likes to duck her in the kitchen, with the windows open so everyone can hear. I moved in my new apartment last year and had a month of silence before all hell broke loose. Over the course of a few months I learned their schedule, names, and even small nuances that gave me a hunch that this person's child may be autistic, just based on sound. Turns out, the child is, so whenever I hear screaming or stomping I try to sympathize. It still sucks though. Been a few years ago, but the family living next to me had a daughter about 13 or 14 years old, and her mom walked in on her laying face down in the bathroom floor trying to take a picture of either her asshole, V, or both to send to some 30-something guy she met online. I know all of these details because mom shouted them at dad when he got home from work and berated daughter for hours. Mom also called the police to report the guy asking for the pictures. I ate my supper cold because I didn't want to make microwave noise in the kitchen because mom was on a roll and it was pretty crazy. That the cop next door is way too nosy. The kids who lived above me used to throw parties all the time. Loud music, drunk and yelling, the works. He thought it was me. And apparently my RFDC shirt, a parody of the AC/DC logo but for a science thing, was proof enough. He called the cops on me one night when the kids threw a party again. I opened my door in my Star Wars pajamas to two uncomfortable looking cops. They take one look at me, apologized, and explained the mistake. I found out later it was my neighbor when he got in my face about the noise I was making. It was my sewing machine. At 2 in the afternoon. My neighbor has a promising career in opera, unfortunately. This one guy can destroy his spouse. Sounds like a tentacle anime over there. That he's black. He was rapping really loudly one night. My apartment walls are actually pretty thick, so all I could hear was muffled mumbling, except for the hook, which was him loudly screaming cause I'm duck in black UH. My old neighbor was really lonely and adorable. She talked to her 2 dogs all the time. Her husband had died, so she lived there next door to us. It was sad, but we had a friendship with her. We would visit with our son occasionally, even after we moved. Guy next door is chronically late and lies to his friends about it every damn time. Like at least once a week. Shouting over loud dubstep, "Yeah man, I'm almost there. Traffic's terrible. Just gimme a few minutes." Itch, you are not in a car. You appear to be sitting around in your bedroom listening to horrible music, waiting for someone to ask where the duck you are. A few stories come to mind. Older couples in their 70s lived on 2nd floor. They would cook me food. I would shovel their cars out in the winter. Here's the fun part. They had the loud S6 several times a week. God bless their vigor. Made a new friend in one apartment by having the smell of dank weed seep into my apartment walls in a duplex. Currently living next to a rock star who unknowingly serenades me every so often when he's preparing for a gig. All in all, I've had a good run. Found out my neighbor was a cam girl. Could hear everything from my bedroom. One weeknight she had a very loud and drunken stream. I went over and knocked on her door to ask her to quiet it down a little. No answer. I go back to my room and hear her crying, saying she thought someone was going to break in or something. Whatever. I called in a noise complaint. Half an hour later the cops show up and pound on her door for a good 15 minutes before she answers. They then proceed to chew her out for taking so long to answer and basically tell her to shut the duck up before leaving. She goes back on stream and starts crying again, telling her viewers what happened before shutting down for the night. Found out my neighbor was a cam girl and made her cry live on stream twice in one night. They juggle bowling balls at 3 AM. Interesting hobby. He's horrifyingly inappropriate and violent when playing games online. I hope that's what he's doing. I think my upstairs neighbor enjoys having animalistic sexual intercourse. Seriously, it sounds like a damn herd of elephants sometimes. It's either a fight club or an orgy club. In my old apartment, lived above the superintendent. I learned he's a massive ducking arsehole who will terrorize tenants over minor grievances, such as being able to hear them walk. My username may pertain to this situation. My new downstairs neighbor is a middle-aged, maybe 50, woman, and I hear her crying loudly to herself and on the phone with people all the time. From what I've heard, her husband was abusive and kicked her out for a stripper, A young couple moved next door with a toddler and a new puppy. Aside from the occasion crying from kid or puppy, I mostly just hear the kid running around and giggling really loud and the sound of a ball bouncing off the wall and the puppy chasing after it. On the other side of my apartment, the family loves Eurodance music. Years ago I lived in an apartment with the thinnest walls I've ever encountered. I could hear everything and my neighbor and his girlfriend were quite active to say the least. One day I started thinking, her voice sounds different. Oh, sure enough. The next day the girlfriend comes over and they had a huge fight. I don't know how she found out, but she found out pretty quickly. They watch QI a lot. The husband snores and they have a 6 maybe biannually. The course of a year, my next door neighbor has broken up with her boyfriend 6 times and had very loud makeup 6 times. Upstairs neighbor loves bringing home girls at 2 to 3 am, and they consistently always wear heels. I mean, it sounds like goddamn tango practice up there. Not an apartment, but when I stayed at a ski lodge about a month ago I found out that my neighbor was a white supremacist with a very shouty solo podcast. Learned that my, now former, neighbor is an unmedicated paranoid schizophrenic. Getting woken up at 3 am with him screaming about the FBI watching him and racist rants was tons of fun. Holly would have conversations with herself all the time. She would scream a lot too, mostly about zombies and the native warlord that sent people to kill her. One day she apparently got locked out of her apartment trying to find the bathroom, broke the window by the back door to the building and pulled the fire alarm at 3 am. She got a 7-day eviction notice and a social worker took her away. The apartment manager told me she had schizophrenia and he thought she had a caretaker living with her, but she didn't. My only conversation with her, she told me she would die for me. It was insanely creepy. Yes, and AskReddit I have a good story for. So, I used to live in this very hip, loft-style apartment building. It attracted a lot of young people. The people in the apartment next to me were college students. The walls were so thin if they were having a conversation on speakerphone in their living room I could hear 75% of the conversation. It sucked, but once you got used to it, it wasn't a huge deal. One night a friend and I come back, rather late, from a night at my local watering hole and we can hear the guy next door getting lucky. We both giggle to ourselves, but whatever, good for him. I go into my room to crash and my buddy hits the couch. A few seconds later we both hear as clear as day a girl's voice saying, "I won't lick your asshole but I will give you head." My buddy and I both start laughing our asses off. Dude next door pounds a few times on the wall and yells, "Hey man, give me some space. Good times." Edit. Forgot some words. My neighbor's wife is a total starfish in bed. Either that or she wears a ball gag. She must have watched too much porn. All women don't scream like that when having sex. In college I was always back at my apartment before lunch this one semester. This beautiful Targaryen model type new alum lived next to us with her Brazilian soccer player student boyfriend. I can't understate how made for TV this couple looked, at least for where I went to school. They would occasionally argue really badly at lunch. He would leave for class. She would proceed to loudly masturbate. This happened for weeks. I don't know if she instigated arguments because they turned her on, or if that's how she dealt with stress, or what. One of my female roommates was friends with her and from the stories she seemed like an odd duck. Weird ideas about relationships. Some eating problems in the past. Weird neighbor. TL. DR. Hot girl and her boyfriend would argue before boyfriend left for class. Hot girl would jill off afterward. Late to the game on this one. My neighbor was a police officer. No idea what his wife did. Every night he started drinking when he got home. Usually turned into a screaming fight at 8 o'clock. Sounded like plate CTC being broken. Maybe actual fighting by 9:30. Asleep. Passed out by 10 o'clock 10:30. I used to joke to my wife that relationship was going to end in a homicide investigation. One night, after 2 hours of fighting, they're screaming at each other and bang. Definite gunshot. My wife is out of country. Just me in the apartment. I grab my cell phone and dial 911. Then I can hear her crying. But I can't hear him. As I'm talking to 911, she runs out of the apartment and drives away. I'm trying to describe the car when the police show up. Turns out she just put a hole in the wall to scare him. He was drunk but very much alive. She moved out the next day. He stayed for like 3 months. I'm guessing to finish the lease. I don't think anyone was ever charged with anything.